यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जयो राधा माधव जयो कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ जयो गिरिवर धारी जयो गिरिवर धारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजनाय यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजनाय यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जयो राधा माधव जयो कुंज बिहारी जयो जयो राधा माधव जयो कुंज बिहारी जयो जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्र श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जयो विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्र श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। कलियुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nashtaprayesha bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामने गौरद्विषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गे राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रियै। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। सर्वशास्त्रार्थ पीयूषा सर्ववैदिकसत्फला सर्वसिद्धान्तरत्नाढ्य सर्वलोकैकदृक्प्रदा सर्वभागवतप्राण श्रीमद्भागवतं प्रभो कलिध्वान्तोदितादित्य श्रीकृष्णपरिवर्तिता। हरे कृष्ण। Reading from Canto 11, Chapter 17, text 57 and 58. Aho me pitaro vruddho bharya balatmajatmajah anathamamrite dina katham jivanti dukkhitah. Aho me pitaro vruddho भार्या बालात्मजात्मजाः अनाथमामृते दीना कथं जीवन्ति दुःखिताः। अहो मे पितरौ वृद्धौ भार्या बालात्मजात्मजाः अनाथमामृते दीना कथं जीवन्ति दुःखिताः। पितरो वृद्धो आत्मामृते दीना कथं जीवन्ति दुःखिताः। भार्या बालात्मजात्मजा दीना दुःखिता। ओम पितरो वृद्धो Ladies. Aho, alas, may my Pitaro, parents, Vriddho, elderly, Bharya, wife, Bala Atmaja, having a mere infant in her arms, Atmajah, and my other young children, Anathah, with no one to protect them, Mam, me, Rite, without, Deenah, wretched, Katham, how in the world, Jivanti, can they live, Dukkhitah, suffering greatly. Translation by disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O my poor elderly parents, and my wife with a mere infant in her arms, and my other young children, without me they have absolutely no one to protect them and will suffer unbearably. How can my poor relatives possibly live without me? This doesn't have a purport, so we read the next verse as well. Evam grihashaya kshipta hirdayo moodadhir ayam atriptastan anudhyayan mrito andham vishate tamaha. Thus, because of his foolish mentality, a householder whose heart is overwhelmed by family attachment is never satisfied. Constantly meditating on his relatives, he dies and enters into the darkness of ignorance. Purport. Andham Vishate Tamaha indicates that in his next life, an attached householder will certainly be degraded because of his primitive mentality of bodily attachment, which is called mood dhi. In other words, after enjoying the sense gratification of considering oneself the center of everything, one enters into a lower species of life. Somehow or other, we must fix our minds on Lord Krishna and come out of the darkness of ignorance to our real life in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 11th canto, 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna's Description of the Varnashram System. So, thank you all for coming for this morning discussion on this section of the Bhagavatam. And Lord Krishna is explaining the duties and the responsibilities of different varnas and ashram here. And till now he just discussed about the responsibilities and the behavior of a brahmachari and a householder. And these three verses are indicating the faults of attachment of what can happen in that particular situation. The pitfall is being described here. So definitely I won't kind of address that particular aspect directly because that requires certain qualification to do. But I am going to pick up this, making a small attempt by all of your blessings, on this one word called moodhadhi, which the translators translate as unintelligent point of view. So I'll make an attempt here. So basically, the theme that we are trying to address here is that illusion that a living entity gets sometimes, that he can protect and maintain others. He basically forgets that Krishna is the only protector and maintainer, and he starts claiming a sense of accomplishment in doing that role of being a protector and maintainer. Now this can happen with ordinary people as well as extraordinary people. And interesting is, for ordinary people it happens all the time, but sometimes when extraordinary people get into this illusion, then the conversations or the examples that follow actually shows the profound lessons and the ways we can actually deal with this situation. Once His Grace Gauranga Prabhu was giving a class and he said there are two kinds of envies that a living entity can exhibit towards the Supreme Lord. And one is to think I am the supreme enjoyer, and then to understand, and the other thing is to think that I am the supreme maintainer or protector of anyone else. So these are the functions of the Supreme Lord. So the concern here is very valid. It seems selfless also, right? If you just read these translations, you actually see here is a man who is actually thinking about, oh, what will happen to them? How will they be protected? Who will take care of them? Sounds very selfless. And a sense of compassion is there, right? He's actually feeling compassion. Oh, iska khayal kaun rakhega, iska khayal kaun rakhega. But when we are in materialistic consciousness, we come up with wrong solutions to the problems. And Prahlad Maharaj specifically specifies that dukkha tadapi dukkham atadhyaham. He says we actually come up with the wrong solution to the problem. In fact, the solution becomes a bigger problem. Because of this atadhyaham, he is still in the bodily concept of life. Actually speaking, unless this thing is being communicated through various pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam and various other Vaishnava scriptures, actually unless we have a very sincere intent to love Krishna, all our decisions and perceptions would be either incomplete or imperfect. And we see Bhagavatam opens up with that, with Vyasadeva having this predicament. And this kind of condition becomes overwhelming. So a fine balance is needed between doing the needful to help people, because otherwise you become hard-hearted and that becomes an obstacle on the path of bhakti, and also understanding when to move on and leave people with their destiny, leave people with their choices, leave people with their journeys respectively, and move on. Right? So His Grace Srinath Ji Prabhu was once mentioning, he said, intelligent people know when to enter and super intelligent people know when to exit. And he was speaking business world. But that is so true, even our common experience in the world that we have. So I'm going to, there are certain incidents in the Bhagavatam which illustrates this particular principles, where even a great soul sometimes may start thinking in that sense. So we have the very first canto, Yudhishthira Narada Samvad, where Dhritarashtra and Gandhari leaves home. So after the war is over, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, they are living in the house of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and Yudhishthira Maharaj was very nicely taking care of them. And finally Vidura returns, right? Vidura returns after a long time to actually come, and commentators say that he came to Hastinapur only for one day. Like afternoon he came, he rested, took prasad, evening was the satsang, and next day morning was everybody left. So Vidura was very emphatic. So Dhritarashtra gets association of Vidura, and he leaves forest to perfect his life through the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one point of time Vidura is lamenting that he could not introduce him to pure devotional service because of offenses Dhritarashtra had committed against the Pandavas. So when our inability to practice the principles of pure devotional service has something to do with our own behavior as well. Not just exposure to knowledge, but exposure to knowledge can translate into action only when we have the adhikar, which is born with proper penance on the level of consciousness. Which means, one behaves in a mood of humility, in the circle of devotees especially. So if you look at Dhritarashtra was a failure materially. He wanted to be a king all his life and he could not. Lost his 100 sons. Everything was a failure materially. He was a blind man. Nobody ever gave him what he really wanted, and this and that. So Dhritarashtra was a failure materially speaking. But spiritual success and material failure has nothing to do with each other. They both can be two independent journeys. In fact, sometimes it is seen that when people fail materially, they have greater chance of succeeding spiritually. And that change could happen only because of intervention of Vidura. So that is the power of association. And we see so many examples in Prabhupada's life of transforming so many people coming from obscure backgrounds, and they landed up doing such credible service for the movement because the association actually transformed. Right? So in Krishna consciousness, more important than who we are is with whom we are. And that connection can actually lead to a certain kind of empowerment to do certain things for the pleasure of Krishna. Right? And just recently, on the day of Gaur Purnima, His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj, extremely sick actually, extremely sick. It was inconceivable for us to see that he was still sitting and addressing. And he mentioned this point that when you have, sincere desire to please Vaishnavas, then you get empowered to actually please Vaishnavas. So Maharaj Yudhishthira discovers their departure. He is questioning Sanjay, and he is taking all the blame that I was so ungrateful. Maybe my uncle thought that he has already killed my 100 sons. Why should I even live here? I should just leave. I made my uncle feel so bad. And he's remembering all the good things that Dhritarashtra and Vidura had done for him. Now Dhritarashtra really did anything good for him, but still he was able to see that. And as he is lamenting like that, trying to inquire from Sanjay, Sanjay was also too disturbed and he could not understand why Dhritarashtra left. So he's also equally disturbed. And at that time Narad Muni appears on the scene. And Narad Muni is very nicely welcomed, and Yudhishthira Maharaj presents his own disturbed state of mind. And there is a series of verses, around 10 verses that Narad Muni speaks, where he first philosophically dispels Maharaj Yudhishthira's illusion. And he's saying, Ma kanchana shuchorajan. Ma means not. Do not lament, my dear king. Yadishvara vasham jagat. Everything is moving under the control of Ishvara, the supreme controller. This jagat is moving under his control. Loka sapala yasyeme vahantim balimeshitu. Right? And everybody is actually worshipping him to stay protected. Sa samyunakti bhutani sa eva vyunakti cha. And how is this control experienced? He brings people together and disperses them even without their will. So generally, disagreement, distance and death separates people in material world. Right? If you are in the same physical locations, disagreements may separate you. If you are agreeable but you move to different places, then distance will separate you. Even though you are at distance, you are in agreement, but then eventually death will separate you. And that is the manifestation of Krishna's omnipotence in this world through the Kala. That is, sa samyunaktani bhutani sa eva vyunakti cha. And there Prabhupada writes very amazing purports in this whole section of, Prabhupada writes amazing purports everywhere, but this special section is very revealing about his mood of vairagya. So, Narad Muni is actually explaining that ordinarily one cannot change the course of one's happiness and distress by making plans. You cannot change the course of your happiness and distress by making a plan. And everyone has to accept them as they come under the subtle arrangement of Kala. So there is no use trying to counteract them. Prabhupada writes this in the purport. Because you're already under the subject of Kala, don't try to fight Kala. Try to do something that you can eventually get out of the clutches of Kala. So therefore he's saying the best thing is therefore that one should endeavor to achieve salvation, and this prerogative is given only to man because of his developed condition of mental activities and intelligence. I was speaking somewhere and he said everyone actually is looking for independence. We say happiness, but that happiness is a function of independence. Now, if you get whatever you want, but you don't get independence, you won't be happy. Right? You won't be happy. Even if you make a very nice arrangement in Arthur Road jail, you won't be happy living there. Right? Happiness. People are actually looking for independence. What conditioned souls, all of us, we don't understand is independence is a function of consciousness. It is the gift that is awarded by material nature to those who actually work on evolving their consciousness. Now, if you look at around us, like plants or trees, how much independence do they have? Maybe just sway left, right, front, back, that's all. They can't express themselves, they can't move anywhere. The independence is very, very small because the consciousness is snubbed. Higher than that, probably other living beings will have more independence. Maybe a cockroach will have better independence. He can choose which locker to live. Right? locker number 86 or locker number 90 or locker number. He can move. He has a certain level of, I'm not revealing the cleanliness standards of brahmachari ashram, but I'm just giving an example. Sometimes they can choose actually. I live here, I live there. I should go left, right. They have a more degree of independence. But he can't move probably out of that one floor. He's just stuck there. Right? A dog on the other railway station has higher level of freedom. He can choose which platform. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But even there, it's a lot of competition, so you have to define your boundaries. If you're a resident of platform number 1, you better stick to your own place. Right? There are opposing armies and everything. But he has a degree of freedom. He can actually exercise it. And if we see, human beings has the highest level of as it evolves, human beings have a higher level of freedom. But with freedom comes responsibility. And the responsibility human beings have is to work on their consciousness. Every other species that exists in the world doesn't have the capacity or the facility to work on their consciousness. This is the only species which can actually work on its consciousness. And if you don't carry on your responsibility, then the result is the freedom is further restricted. But if somebody performs his responsibility well, he is given more freedom to exercise. And we see that in the Vedic system. Why do these kings would offer so much respect to these sages who would keep traveling, this and that? And when I talk about freedom or independence, it is not just physical freedom that he can just travel anywhere, he can just go anywhere at his will. It is more on a psychological level. So what people do, instead of trying to elevate their consciousness, they want to get freedom by increasing their material opulence. So they try to earn a lot of money and they think by earning money I'll get independence, isn't it? But material nature is such, if you don't work on your consciousness and you try to increase your independence by other means, she will put ankush. She will actually obstruct you to the threefold miseries of material existence. And you see that often. Sometimes people earn a lot of wealth and invariably, Bhagavatam says the faults of earning a lot of wealth, but invariably they fall into vices. They fall into bad habits, they fall into various kinds of clutches and their independence gets restricted. And that's what Prabhupada says, that living entity is actually living entity is actually struggling with material nature. He's struggling for what? To gain independence. What he doesn't realize is independence comes by working on your consciousness, elevating your consciousness. And with that freedom will come higher sense of responsibility. And therefore Mahaprabhu said, people in the Bharatvarsha have the highest responsibility of giving Krishna consciousness to others, because more freedom. They have more access to spiritual knowledge, more easy access to, the process of devotional service. So this is important as devotees practicing bhakti. We sometimes seek freedom by claiming our rights. When I was discussing with someone, I said the best way you can mess up your life, the best way you can mess up your relationship, whether it is one-to-one relationship or an institutional relationship, is just start focusing on your rights over responsibilities. If we start focusing just on our rights over responsibilities, we are sure to mess up our relationship. The way it works is when you focus on responsibilities and do your contribution the way you're expected to, in proportion to the freedom that you have received, the nature is designed in such a way that you will be awarded more freedom. It's like a gift Krishna awards. Okay, here is one who is using his freedom well, now take more. It's like a father who gives 500 rupees note to his son, he uses it well, saves money also, and then next time he gets 2000 rupees to strike a better deal. So you get more and more facilities, so freedom comes like that. So Narad Muni is further explaining by examples of how everything is actually working under the Lord's orders, and he gives example of a cow being bound by a long rope, and we have read these pastimes several times. And he gives example of a player trying to set up playthings and disturbing the whole play at his own will. So Krishna independently can actually, change the cataclysms of material nature. And these things are uneasy for a conditioned soul to listen, because we all have a very strong tendency to control everything. We want our bodies to function exactly the way we want them to. We want our relationships to function exactly the way we want them to. We want our services to be exactly the way we want to. We want our experience in spiritual life also exactly the way we want to. I want to experience bliss in bhakti, right? I want to do devotional service so that I experience bliss in bhakti. But that's not bhakti's definition. Actually, it is also subtle kind of arrogance when we demand that I should get certain kind of experiences in bhakti. Experiences in bhakti is in the hands of the spiritual energy. All we have in our hand is the execution of devotional service with the right mode. So, the whats of bhakti are very easy to perform. Hows of bhakti is a little difficult. And the whys of bhakti require divine intervention. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And why is that? It is because the whats of bhakti only involves the senses. Right? What do I have to do? I have to come for Mangala Arati. Sometimes that also becomes difficult, but it's still reasonably within limits, right? If you just manage to sleep in the temple hall and wake up with the lights and then just follow the mechanical motions of going into the bathroom, you will land up here by 5 o'clock. 4:57 will be here, right? So whats of bhakti are easier to perform. And if you just make a decision to stay in the temple hall from 5:50 to 7:45, so even 16 will be over, right? By the stroke of the discipline, and so many people are chanting around, even that gets over. Just you have to make sure you just be here. Whats of bhakti are easier because only senses are involved. Hows of bhakti, how to perform bhakti involves the mind. How am I supposed to chant? How am I supposed to take darshan? How am I supposed to hear? How am I supposed to read? Unless the mind is involved in the actions of bhakti, impressions are not created. The impressions on the chitta is created only when mind gets focused on actions. If the mind is not focused on actions, senses itself will not create impressions. Like I'll give an example. Suppose you might have, all of us have studied in colleges, so we all have this experience of studying in a class and not listening even a word that is being spoken by the professor. Correct, no? You're outside the window or you're somewhere else and you are actually looking at the blackboard only. You're actually looking at the blackboard, but you're not registering anything. Why? The mind is not involved. The senses in itself don't register anything. It is the mind. That's why Krishna, the 15th chapter says, Manaschayam, all of them, Shrotram, Chakshus, Sparshnam cha, Rasnam, Grahanam, Evacha, Adhisthaya, Manaschayam. Everything is centered around the mind. So in bhakti, we have to actually involve the mind in the process of devotional service, Otherwise, mind is so amazing that it can make anything mechanical. Even for that matter, chanting 16 rounds can become mechanical if you are not conscientious. And all of us have experienced it. 16 rounds over and then, oh wow, it's like, when did that happen? And we have not actually really listened to the holy name. But the whys of bhakti are extremely difficult. Why to perform bhakti is difficult? Because that requires purification of the ego. That I am not the supreme enjoyer, I am not the supreme controller. The one who is standing here is the one. I have to make him as the center of my life, not my own choices, not my own desires and demands. And then bhakti becomes difficult. Why to perform bhakti requires purification. And actually when people say bhakti is very easy, it is because they have never practiced it. Because if you practice bhakti the way it is supposed to be done, it is one of the most difficult process. Because karma yoga, senses involved, jnana yoga, intelligence involved, dhyana yoga, mind can be involved. Bhakti is where ego gets plummeted. And ego is crushed. Ego is pierced. Various kinds of operations, whatever you can think on, is done on the ego. And that's painful. Right? Sometimes we get this pus in the, in your thumb or somewhere, and then the doctor just presses it hard. Right? And at that time, you are most envious of the doctor only. You're most angry at the doctor only. Kya kar raha hai itna jor se dawa? I remember is actually Krishna's kindness of reducing the otherwise pain we will experience in purification of the ego. And if we flip out only with that pinprick, then life is pretty difficult. Purification of the ego becomes extremely difficult. If we can't even, and for that pinprick to happen, I need to have very strong relationship with the person who is doing the pinprick. Yesterday I was talking somewhere and I was remembering during our BT days, I should not use the word sent to, but we went to Govardhaniko village for 3 months. Sent to sounds very, it's like Kalapani or something like that. But it was a great experience being in GV. At that time there was just this one building and nothing else, and we were the first one to make those roads, and it was quite an experience. And I remember one day we were cleaning that, and Vamsi Bihari Prabhu would stay with us, Shadbhuj Prabhu would stay with us, and our dear Narsim Lila Prabhu would cook every week. Whenever his turn would come, we would get a lot of feast and everything. And one day we were cleaning that rooms. They had this big broom, and I was cleaning, and suddenly some small particle of paint flew and landed in my eye. And some of them were there, like, I remember, and I showed it to Satyanand Prabhu, and he said, no, nothing is there, it's visible, it's very clear. But whenever I would close my eyes, it would pain hard. And when I opened my eyes, nothing was visible. So then Vamsi Bihari Prabhu came and he lifted my eyelid. And that white tiny particle was sitting inside the eyelid. And now everybody was wondering, isko kaise nikale? And Vamsi Bihari Prabhu is a very confident kind of personality. You know what he did? He took a needle. Right? And I'm watching this with another eye. He took a needle and he says, Hilna mat. And he put a little cotton on top of it and just removed it. How I could go through that experience? Because of my relationship and confidence in him. That he deserves my well-being only. Otherwise, how much it takes, one chink aa jati udhar, right? Just he would have sneezed, so instead of ting, ting ho jata ho, and then I would have been sitting like this here probably, right? Life would have been different. But I could allow him to do such a sensitive thing with me, enter my very inner space, because he loved me, I loved him, and there was a sense of relationship. Without relationships with devotees on a very intimate level, we will never be able to deal with our egos on our own. It doesn't work. Right? That's what Prabhupada said. If you think you can become Krishna conscious without association with devotees, you're in a fool's paradise. It doesn't happen. Because ego has to be purified. And it's not sometimes painful, it is always painful. Purification of the ego is always painful, and especially when your identity is in crisis. I remember when His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj was invited for a high tea at President House when Barack Obama was visiting. And there are a lot of protocols to be followed. This thing should be there, that thing should be there. And our Brajendra Nandan Prabhu, the communications in charge at New Delhi, east of Kailash Temple, he was there. And Maharaj was sitting and I was in front, and he was asking me in Hindi. He said, ये लिया ना, ये डॉक्यूमेंट लिया ना, पासपोर्ट का कॉपी लिया ना, सेल्फ अटेस्ट कराया ना, ये एक वो चाहिए था, एक इस्कॉन का चाहिए था, सब लिया ना. मैंने कहा, यस प्रभु जी, सब कुछ लिया. दो कॉपी लिया. And he became very happy. He's a very humorous person. And then he told Maharaj, Maharaj, your secretary is very intelligent. And Maharaj looked out the window and he said, yeah, sometimes. And I was like, oh my God. I was feeling happy. Maybe Maharaj said, yeah, he's very intelligent. He's from Indian Institute of Science. He's very good. Sometimes he's intelligent. I was like, okay, fine. Settle down, be peaceful. How could you handle it? Because the potential difference and the loving relationship that is there, okay, something coming from him is for my good. So you accept it and you move on, right? Because a stranger you won't allow a stranger to pierce your ego. He will only fight with your ego, but not disseminate it. For disseminating the ego, you need a spy inside who looks like a friend, but he's determined to just pulverize it, right? So we have to let devotees in our inner chambers, at least one or two, few of them at least, who are potentially capable of doing this significant task for us. So in this way, Narad Muni is explaining that lamentation is because of illusory attachments, and ignorance gives all kind of anxiety. And he says, no one but the Lord is the only protector. And that famous verse, he says, Kal karma gunadhino dehoyam panch bhautike. Katham anyams tu gopayet sarp grasto yatha param. Somebody already in the jaws of death, how can he protect somebody else? So he says this, and Narad Muni, convinces Maharaj Yudhishthir that you should see life in perspective of true knowledge and don't get bewildered by the illusory anxieties of this material world. Recently I was just speaking to one of our devotees and in the ashram, and we were discussing that how when you analyze life, like I asked him, he said, what do you think is the common thing between Duryodhan and Arjun in the first chapter of Gita? Both of them analyzed the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One of them became super confident of his victory, another became super depressed. And I said, both Arjun and Duryodhan in their analysis missed one common thing. What was that? Krishna. So when we analyze life without Krishna in picture, we either become overwhelmed by depression, hopelessness, purposelessness, or illusion by overconfidence that everything will be all right. As devotees also sometimes we will end up making such mistakes. And when we actually become overconfident, that's the time we sometimes start making offenses also. Any kind of analysis, any kind of perception of reality without Krishna in picture leads to unfavorable results. So Narad Muni is telling him, therefore my dear Yudhishthira Maharaj, you should simply focus on the Lord's plan and the Lord's plan for you, and he is going to disappear very soon, and now you also plan up accordingly, and don't worry about your Dhritarashtra, your uncle, because he has gone to Sapta Srota, and 5th day from today he will actually disappear, self-immolate himself. Don't even worry about Gandhari because she will become Sati, and don't worry about Vidura because he would walk once again on the path of pilgrimage and go ahead with his journey. So thus Narad Muni pacifies Maharaj Yudhishthir, and he becomes... so we see here even great soul like Maharaj Yudhishthir could be overcome by illusion, but words of sadhu helped him come over it. We see an example in the Bhagavatam where Krishna allowed that particular personality to see the full consequences of such kind of attachment, and that was Bharat Maharaj. And I won't go into the details of the past time. We all know how Bharat Maharaj at the level of bhava became overly affectionate to the baby deer, resulted in neglect of his spiritual duties, and eventually he fell down, at least temporarily, into the body of a deer, and then again became, Jada Bharat and delivered Maharaj Rahugana. So this is an example of someone who extended compassion but got caught up. Right? It's like saying, we should not literally do it, but it's like saying, pulling out a fish without getting wet. So here he was who extended compassion, but he got caught up with the object of his compassion. We see example of Yayati trying to deliver Devyani, got caught up with the object of his compassion. So when he came back again as Jada Bharat, he was super careful. No lecture, no preaching. He just really went to another extreme. He really did everything that was contrary to even his prestige as a Brahman. Right? Radha Govind Maharaj very graphically explains that how Jada Bharat would wash himself first before responding to nature's call, and after that he will simply come home and say, where is Prasad? His father struggled to teach him Gayatri for several months, Bhagavatam says. He just could not teach him Gayatri mantras. He would just mess up every time, right? Because he didn't wanted that prestige of, and this honor of being very learned. So when that situation came to actually deliver Maharaj Rahugana, after helping him, he did not settle down to become the royal guru. He just moved on. Immediately moved on with his own journey and allowed the king to be with Krishna and explore his own path. He moved on. Some commentators say that Rahugana is the same baby deer who came as the king. And Maharaj Jada Bharat could actually recognize, iski wajah se hua tha na, ab isko main deliver karta hu. I'll deliver. And the deer could become a king because of the association of Maharaj Bharat. He actually could transcend all that stuff. So commentators say like that. So this is a very interesting, principle in the life of especially devotees who are preaching this who are doing the outreach, who are taking this message to people, how much to give and when to move on, and not get caught up with the objects of your compassion. We have example in the Bhagavatam where somebody showed compassion even though going out of his normal behavior, but then at the right time moved on. Shukdev Goswami, right? Sagodohana matram hi griheshu grihamedinam. He would just stay for the time it takes to milk a cow. But how can such a person change his behavior and stay for 7 days and 7 nights with a king? Unheard of. Saintly people, sages in those times would not necessarily deal with kings, but here he was 7 days, 7 nights with the king. But Shukdev Goswami did not wait to see Parikshit Maharaj passing away. As soon as his discourse was over, he asked, "Do you want to know anything more?" He said, "I'm happy and satisfied by hearing your description of the personal aspect of Krishna. I'm very grateful to you." Shukdev said, "Fine then, I'm going." He just stood up and left. He did not want to enjoy the result of his preaching. Right? Even the fact that significant event, the cosmic event that was happening where Parikshit Maharaj is departing, he didn't want to be a part of that picture as well. He just did his role, moved on. He focused on his own journey. Sometimes that happens even while trying to preach Krishna consciousness. We help people in their journeys, but we get overwhelmed by the complexities of their journey and forget our own journey. The balance is you have to help them, inspire them to take on their journey, at the same time making sure that we continue ours. So this ability to let go when there is need is very important. So as practitioners and preachers of bhakti, we need to train people to take shelter of Krishna through our words and our example. We should not let people get stuck with us because we don't have the capacity to accept surrender. Even if people are willing to surrender, we may not have the capacity to accept surrender. Even that requires certain kind of potency. Prabhupada said, "I may let you down, but Krishna won't." Follow him. Right? So when we start thinking that we can give shelter to people, save them, and we can deliver them, we fall in the trap of ego, which is the subtlest, and start offending and becoming too possessive about the people also whom we are trying to help move on the path of bhakti. And then those same very people's anarthas can actually sabotage our practice of devotional service. And Bhagavatam illustrates that with the pastime of Saubhari Muni. Saubhari Muni is a great ascetic performing austerities in Yamuna underwater. Can you imagine? No Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram. What peaceful, no notification, no distraction, no disturbance, no Menka, no Rambha coming inside water. He's just performing austerities. And then these fishes, Garudaji one day wanted to have some breakfast from this particular lake, and these fishes came running to him, "Please give us shelter, give us shelter." And then he said, "Oh, okay, I'll give you shelter." And then he checked Garuda's happiness and eventually even cursed him that if you ever come here. And later on, same Saubhari Muni, watching fishes only, fell down. What did he see? He just see a big fish being followed by small fishes. And he developed this desire that I should also enjoy. The same people whom he is trying to help and protect became the cause of his decline because he got into the trap of the ego. Right? Like even, college boys of Bombay don't get distracted seeing an aquarium. Like you see a fish and you get distracted, you get these sensual desires. You don't, right? Fish hai. You don't even understand who is male, who is female, just by looking at the fishes. But here is Saubhari Muni, such an exalted person with such discrimination, because he fell into this trap of the ego. I can protect, I can save, I can actually help them. He got into the trap of this ego and became vulnerable to something so stupid. Something so stupid. And then later on when Saubhari left, what happened to the fishes? Kalia came and poisoned the whole lake. And all fishes also died. No one survived. Neither the protector, nor the one who were being protected. Because the equation led to offense towards a Vaishnava. Right? Probably if Saubhari Muni would have requested Garudaji, "Chhod do bachcho ko, kya hai ye sab?" Malik, right? Equation would have been different. Maybe Kalya would not also have come. Sabri would have attained perfection, whoever, whatever you know. But this is a very interesting thing that we have to be careful about. And in bhakti, everything has value in relationship with Krishna's pleasure. Otherwise, even a glorious quality like compassion, it is such a quality. Karuna is such a quality which is being sought after. Very few people have it. But even a glorious quality in mundane sense can become a stumbling block if it is not as per Krishna's desire or Vaishnava's approval. And we have seen that in ancient history as well as contemporary history, where people have slipped trying to show compassion and were not careful. It was not. So ultimately, unrestricted passion and undue compassion, both are obstacles on the path of bhakti. And unrestricted passion, there are n number of examples. Bhagavatam gives example of Ajamil. He just let loose all his passion and he really degraded himself for almost 60 odd years before he came back to his senses. So unrestricted passion and then undue compassion. We see example of Saubhari Muni, Maharaj Bharat in that case, because of some extraordinary circumstances. So we have to be careful. Now, does that mean we don't engage our passions in Krishna Seva? We don't remain compassionate towards people who don't have Krishna Bhakti? No, we do all that. But both are possible if the person using them is advanced in his consciousness. And we see that examples in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, pastimes of Krishna's devotees, of people engaging their passion without getting implicated. Classic example of Hanumanji, jumping across, putting fire to Lanka, coming back, not even getting disturbed by all the beautiful queens that he was seeing in the sleeping chambers of Ravan. Totally self-controlled. Engaged his passion, although he abhors himself later on that why did I become so angry, but he remained protected. And he came back and continued his service to Lord Ram. Or for that matter, Arjun created havoc in the battle of Kurukshetra, right? But all led to establishment of dharma. And same for compassion. Haridas Thakur, he showed compassion to this prostitute, Lakshahira. And after she is delivered in that pastime, Haridas Thakur actually tells him that I knew you were coming. And that's why he stayed back, to deliver you. And he delivered Maya Devi. He showed compassion, but because he himself was so deeply established in the process of devotional service, he knew when to exit. So as soon as Lakshadhara was delivered, Haridas Thakur did not say, okay, you chant in this corner, I'll chant in this corner. He moved out. He gave that place to her and he moved out. He said, now you are on your own journey. And he was not like overly concerned about your maintenance. Krishna will take care. I've done my role, now Krishna will take care. You now move on your journey and I'm happy with the way you want to move on your journey. Because as practitioners of bhakti, as people who are trying to give people bhakti, sometimes we get too worried about people's speed over direction. Actually, what is in our hand is their direction, not their speed. We can help people get the right direction of moving towards Krishna. Speed, let them decide. We have to ensure that the direction doesn't get wavy. Speed, it is between them and the Lord. How the Lord wants to inspire them, what is their desire and things like that. So as preachers, we need to have both passion and compassion. But more important than both of these qualities is our consciousness of absorption in Krishna. In the heart of heart, we totally understand that all the facilities, abilities and opportunities which come my way, in which I kind of share bhakti with others, is Krishna's arrangement. Everyone has his own journey and I have to play my role as Krishna ordains through this and help this person move towards Krishna. And today Krishna desires to inspire somebody through me. Tomorrow he desires to inspire the same person through someone else, so I don't become insecure. Because my role in life is just to help them, show them the path and let them walk towards Krishna, attractive, the all-attractive Lord. So in order to conclude, I'll just say that in order to go higher, we have to go deeper first. And someone was giving example of this coconut trees, right? When coconut trees grow, and somebody said, I think it was Vasudev Prabhu, we were in Kerala somewhere, and he said, when the coconut tree grows, the the root also goes the equal amount below the ground. Only then can it actually handle the stormy weather and everything else. Right? The coconut trees or the palm trees, all those tall trees. So in order to go higher, we have to go deeper first. Else, our height will become a cause of our end and not the means to the end of pleasing Krishna. And therefore, becoming Krishna conscious, going deep in our basics of bhakti is not an option, it's a necessity, even in terms of the contribution that you want to make in this Krishna consciousness movement. Otherwise, we might run the risk of helping people and getting overwhelmed with the consequences of their growth or their challenges or their trouble or even the successes of what we are trying to do, and stop our own journeys, which we have begun after millions of lifetimes towards Krishna. I'd like to stop here. Thank you very much for your kind, patient listening and hearing. If I have spoken something which is not appropriate, I'm happy to be corrected and seek your blessings and prayers. Thank you very much. Lila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Mahapuran ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Gaur.